Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know, from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars. Topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. As always, I am your host, Nick Robin, and happy 4th of July to everyone out there. Unfortunately, looks like we're not going to have the same festivities as we are used to, as it looks like the state of California has banned the use of any fireworks this weekend. So, I don't know, what is 4th of July without fireworks? I mean, hopefully we can still have the brews and the burgers and the hot dogs, which is very synonymous with 4th of July. But yeah, so I was supposed to head out to Newport this weekend, and my friend texted me saying they were going to get a boat, but that my other friend, who he's barely friends with, has priority over me due to the fact that he was going to bring his girlfriend and all her beautiful friends. Don't know how I feel about that. I know, a little bit shady, but hey, can't argue with that. I mean, if anyone knows, you always need to keep that ratio up. So, hey, no hard feelings there, Max, but looks like I'm going to have to find new plans. So, today I will be discussing Rich Paul's career uprise, Klutch Sports taking over the agency game, and on Nick's picks, the best sports movies since '93. But first, I will take a look at one of the biggest stories in sports right now that nobody seems to care or be talking about. And that is Kelly Loeffler, the co-owner of the WNBA Atlanta Dream and the Georgia U.S. Senator. And she's giving us, so everybody knows what's going on in the world with the Black Lives Matter protests and everything going awry due to COVID and the inequality that we still have in our country after just so, like, 1965, we got rid of segregation, and in '08 we had a black president, but I don't know, things seem to not be, I mean, yeah, we still find ourselves in this, like, racist world and country, and I don't know what else needs to be done to just to show people that just because your skin might be a little bit darker, like, how does that make them less of a human being? And going on, let's go back to Kelly Loeffler. So, co-owner of the WNBA Atlanta Dream and Georgia U.S. Senator, she made some comments last week on Fox News, basically implying that African Americans do not have the same constitutional rights when it comes to the Second Amendment. So that statement alone should have caused wavelengths across the internet, but for some reason, not enough people are reporting about this. So she says that due to the fact that there are African-American protesters in Atlanta carrying guns outside of Wendy's, where police killed Rashard Brooks earlier this month. Loeffler said, "This is totally unacceptable. We cannot allow mob rule. We are a nation of the rule of law." So she says this statement, and then, so just so we know, it is legal again in Georgia to carry guns. And if we scan Loeffler's Twitter account, she shows she is completely silent last month when dozens of armed white protesters, upset over being told they had to wear a mask for health and safety of others and couldn't buy, gasp, an iced tea at their favorite restaurant. Enter the Michigan State House wearing camo, wearing armed men, march to the streets of Raleigh, North Carolina. And she says nothing in regards to this. It's the same exact thing. Actually, it is not the same exact thing because the people in Atlanta are having a protest over someone who got killed, and these white people in Raleigh, North Carolina are complaining because they can't get an iced tea. And she says nothing about this. So, getting to my point, Kelly Loeffler is the owner of the WNBA Atlanta Dream. 2/3 of the league is African American. She's giving us some kind of Donald Sterling vibes here, and we'll get into that a little bit later. So, moving on next, she posts a video on Twitter supporting the anti-LGBTQ Family Policy Alliance. And pointing now back to the WNBA, several players, particularly on her own team, are out as gay. So, that's strike number 2. So, first, we had the comments that she made implying that African Americans don't have the same constitutional rights as white people. Strike number 1. Strike number 2, she posts this video in support of an anti-LGBTQ organization. And then strike number 3 here, she called the U.S. Supreme Court's decision to strike down Louisiana's highly restrictive abortion law an activist agenda. So, how is someone like this able to be an owner in a league that is so forward-thinking? So, yeah, I mean, this is blasphemous that this story has not gained enough traction. So let's compare now to Donald Sterling, who was the former owner of the Clippers. So his mistress, as V. Stiviano, Sterling's mistress, recorded Sterling admitting he was upset that she was associating with black people, and specifically addressed her not to bring African Americans to his games. What the fuck? Like, you're the owner of a team where the majority of the players are black. You're going to tell someone, like, that's 6 years ago, so we don't need to get caught up in that story too much, but these owners with this slave mentality, it is disgusting that we still see this in the year 2020. Again, as I mentioned earlier, like in 65, we passed the civil rights laws, and in 2008, we have an African American president, and we're still seeing this discrimination in the year 2020. It is honestly unbelievable that this is still an issue, that this is still such a large issue in America, and that people, particularly in my community, because I'm from a somewhat conservative area, don't think it's a problem. It is. And the people in this community are not dumb. Like, they're smart, college-educated people, and they think that there's not an issue here. So, back to Donald Sterling. He was sued in the past. This is not his first time with racial inequality, or he was sued multiple times for house discrimination. And then, of course, Adam Silver banned him from the NBA in 2014. In April 2014, one of the first big moves by Commissioner Silver, who has been amazing for the sport and has done so much. So let's go back to Kelly Loeffler. What should the WNBA do? I don't think you can have an owner who's unaware of the current climate or just plain ignorant, not only to other WNBA players, but to the queer women who play for the team she co-owns. These acts are bad. Are just as bad, if not worse, than Sterling's, and she has been very public about it. Where Donald Sterling, the one thing in his defense is it is against the law to record someone without their consent. So that is the one thing that is on Donald Sterling's side. Not saying that anything he said is appropriate or that I agree with, because I don't. It's hideous. These type of people are just disgusting human beings. It's not the 1800s anymore. People need to adapt. And so I don't think someone with Kelly Loeffler's beliefs, fine. If she wants to believe she can believe whatever she wants. If she thinks that she wants to say the things about the constitutional rights, go do that, but you can't be a part of this league anymore. So they need to ban her ass immediately. Someone with these beliefs should not be allowed to own a WNBA, NBA, or any sports team for that matter, especially in a league that is so predominantly African American and also openly, where a lot of the players are openly out as gay. So like, it makes no sense. Why is she still in the league? Like, and why is this story not getting enough traction? So I think right now with everything going on, every story should be blown up because nobody's got anything else to do. We're still not allowed to leave our house. I mean, we're barely allowed to leave our houses. They just closed down the bars in LA. They're closing down the restaurants as well. And it just disgusts me that we have people like this running, not just running sports teams, but running our country. Someone with these kind of beliefs, especially in this sensitive time that we're in. I've been searching the internet, looking for articles on this, and really there's not that many, which blows my mind. Maybe it's because the WNBA isn't on the same level as the NBA, and that's why there's not as much traction for this kind of story, but this is something that needs to be spoken about. This is something that we need to do something about this. This woman needs to be banned from the WNBA. She should no longer be able to co-own the Atlanta Dream. It's as simple as that. So, you can believe whatever you want, but these beliefs will not be tolerated in a league such as the NBA, the WNBA that are very big on inequality, or that speak out on inequality and pride in the LGBTQ community. This is just, it's unacceptable. It's a debate of right and wrong. And in this case, she's on the wrong side. I know politics can be a sticky situation, but judging people based off color of skin or saying things like this, it doesn't fly. It didn't fly 40 years ago, it doesn't fly today, and I think the WNBA needs to do something immediately. And again, I've been searching the internet every other day, keeping up with this story, and there just seems not to be much traction on it. And it's kind of sad that people or the media doesn't seem to care or doesn't seem to be publicizing enough about what is going on, and the fact that she's still even able to run for senator. It's disgusting. Like, I don't know. I'm from California. It's a very liberal state here, and I just grew up with just a little more sense and a little more compassion for others, and I don't know, some people just didn't. So that's the end of this story. Kelly Loeffler, the WNBA's version of Donald Sterling. We'll see what happens in these next couple of weeks, and hopefully they ban her ass from ever co-owning another team in the WNBA, the NBA, or any sports league for that matter. Moving forward, after this break, we will be looking at the career and rise of Rich Paul, LeBron James's agent, and how he broke into the scene, how he got to where he is today. So stay tuned for after this commercial break. We will be looking at the rise of Rich Paul and Klutch Sports and how they are taking over the agency game and what may or may not be seen as tampering. So stay tuned.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And we're back. Last week on the show, we were discussing LeBron James's decision 10 years later in the making and what that led to in terms of player empowerment and a player having more control than the owners and the teams and the organizations that they play for, and how he established a new regime of player empowerment into the 2010s and beyond. So we discussed that, and we're going to now talk about one of the four horsemen. So you got LeBron James, the basketball player. You have Maverick Carter, the producer, the man behind the scenes in creating Spring Hill Entertainment and The Uninterrupted. Then you have Randy Mims, his chief of staff and security. And then you have the agent, Rich Paul. And that's what we are going to talk about now today. So Rich Paul, he met LeBron. So Rich Paul is one of the only, I think he's one of the only, out of the four of them, he's the only one who didn't grow up with them. He met LeBron at 21 at an airport in Akron. According to Business Insider, he was starting a throwback jersey company out of his car trunk in Cleveland. He'd go to Atlanta. He'd get them at a somewhat discounted price, and then he would resell them for profit. And so again, he met LeBron at the airport, and he gave him his Atlanta Connect, told him to drop his name to get a discount. And after that, they started communicating back and forth. And when LeBron got drafted in 2003, he brought on Rich Paul. He brought on Rich Paul on a $50,000 a year salary to be just one of his guys. There was no concrete job at the time, and really, Rich Paul he's a self-made man. No matter what you want to say, yeah, he's boys with LeBron, but he did it all on his own. So he wanted to learn the industry, and LeBron, he took advantage of the connections and the introductions LeBron made for him. So he went and worked for LeBron's current agent at the time, Leon Rose at CAA. He learned the game. He learned what it took to be an agent, and was introduced to other people like Warren Buffett, and was able to make himself into a self-made businessman. No college degree, but nonetheless was able. And let's talk about college. I think college is maybe one of the most overrated pieces of BS. That it's just a money-making system at this point. The college system makes billions of dollars, maybe trillions of dollars a year off of our society. And to be honest, I don't think college, yeah, it was a great time. And yes, you're away from your family for the first time. It allows you to grow into being an adult and allows you to think differently outside of how you thought in high school. And yes, I think it is something that everybody should do, but I don't think it's a necessity, especially to be successful in this world. In this world, you need to be socially aware. You need to be business savvy, and that's something that you don't necessarily get from going to college. So that we're going to go into this a little bit later with the Rich Paul rule. So again, Rich Paul, he met LeBron at 21, ended up working for him after he got drafted, and in 2012 he separated himself from Leon Rose and became LeBron's primary agent. He fired Leon Rose. Rich Paul is now his agent, and in 2012 he started Klutch Sports Group. And he now has 23 clients, including some of the best players in the world outside of LeBron James. He has Anthony Davis, John Wall, Ben Simmons, and Draymond Green. So let's take a closer look at that. So not only does he have LeBron, possibly still the best player in the world, he's got Anthony Davis, a top 10 player in the NBA. He's got John Wall, who's got one of the largest contracts and probably one of the worst contracts in the NBA. He's got Ben Simmons, a rising star with plenty of potential if he can learn how to shoot threes. And then Draymond Green, one of the best, not rotational, but one of the best role players in NBA history. And amongst these guys and the other 15 or 18 or so clients, he has over $800 million in active contracts. So if you look at that number alone, the typical agent, I believe, gets about 4%. Really just depends on how much you and your clients negotiate on that. So he's making about $32 million, at least a minimum, I would say, of about $30-ish million off these contracts. So not bad for a guy, again, with no college degree. And that brings us now to the Rich Paul rule. So earlier last year, the NCAA came out with a memo outlining requirements for agents representing players that are leaving colleges who are debating whether to return for another year of college basketball or go into the draft. And one of the requirements was a bachelor's degree. And this is my thinking here. What gives colleges the right or discretionary to tell a student who they can and cannot be represented by? Like, yeah, what the colleges don't control. Like, the colleges, hey, if you leave college, when the players leave college, they are no longer associated with the university. The university cannot tell them who can manage them and who can't manage them based on their level of education. That's complete bullshit. The fact that they were trying to limit people who don't have the resources to, that don't have the resources to go to college, or maybe they don't have the desire, that's un-American. Like, not everyone can go to college, and like I said earlier, it's kind of a flawed system. It costs over six figures to send one person to college, depending where you go. If it's USC, if it's University of San Diego, if it's any school in a Power 5 conference, Colorado Boulder, Oregon State, all these out-of-state schools for someone who is from California, it's going to cost you at least close to $200,000. And a lot of people don't have those resources. So the NCAA trying to negate people from that are agents by representing players, that's complete bullshit. And so what happened next year? So the NCAA sent out this memo, or this outlining these requirements for who can represent players that are looking to either jump from college to go to the league after a year. So right after this happened, LeBron went to Twitter, and 6 hours later, the NCAA backed off. So here is a quote from Rich Paul on the Rich Paul rule. So, start quote, NCAA executives are once again preventing young people from less prestigious backgrounds, and often people of color, from working in the system they continue to control. In this case, the people being locked out are kids who aspire to be an agent and work in the NBA and do not have the resources, opportunity, or desire to get a 4-year degree. And LeBron, he retweeted this quote from the Undefeated with just the hashtag Stay Woke Folks, and 6 hours later, the NCAA just backed off. It is crazy. It is absurd in the best possible way, the type of power LeBron James, who also didn't go to college, doesn't have a college degree, and the impact he is having on the world, not just for basketball players, but for all young African Americans, can show you the type of damage you can do, the type of power you can hold without going to college. But again, LeBron is in a class all by himself, so I don't think anyone should grow up. I don't think everybody should aspire to be LeBron James, because not everyone can be LeBron James. I mean, he's the top 3 basketball player of all time, but it's great to see someone with the platform that he's been granted doing the kind of righteousness and standing up for his boy in Rich Paul. So, yes, it is complete absurdity that the NCAA thinks they can disallow people like Rich Paul, who, hey, again, didn't go to college, but has made a great living for himself and has taken advantage of the opportunities that have been presented to him to get to where he is today. And thankfully, he's got a good buddy like LeBron who's able to back him up and allow him to continue doing the great work he's been doing for almost a decade now as LeBron's agent. So we've talked about Rich Paul, who he is, how he came into contact with LeBron, how he started Klutch Sports Group, the Rich Paul rule. We're going to move on to I think what could one day be a very interesting 30 for 30, the fact that Rich Paul, who, as we have said multiple times, is good friends with LeBron, has this kind of, I'm not saying that LeBron is tampering in any way, but that is what we're going to discuss next is there a conflict of interest here? And nobody seems to really be talking about it. The fact that the best player in the world's best friend is his agent, and over the years, what's happened with Klutch Sports Group and new players coming on, players that LeBron plays for, players that LeBron wanted to play with that ended up coming to his team, aka Anthony Davis. So that's what we're going to discuss next after this commercial break. So stay tuned to hear the connections between LeBron James, Klutch Sports, Rich Paul, and tampering. Whether or not it is tampering, we will discuss next.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And we're back with you now. So we just spoke about Rich Paul's rise in the agency world and his friendship with LeBron James. I mean, hey, must be nice meeting the future greatest player of all time in the airport. And what's the freak chances of that? Think about if maybe Rich Paul got on an earlier flight or a later flight, or maybe wasn't in the talking mood that day. But hey, luck benefits the hardworking. So, hey, you got to give him kudos where kudos are due. So, yeah, so we discussed Rich Paul, the Rich Paul rule, him starting Klutch Sports, and the clientele that he's accumulated over the last several years. And now we're going into a topic that I think needs to be discussed, and it's not discussed enough in terms of Klutch Sports and his involvement, and LeBron James's involvement in everything that goes on with Klutch Sports. But first, I'm going to take a look at some of Rich Paul's savvy business deals, along with a couple of his train wrecks. So, the move that really got Rich Paul noticed was the way he orchestrated LeBron's return to Cleveland, and it was I think, influenced, and him being from Cleveland, LeBron being from Akron, right outside of Cleveland, what bringing a championship meant to not only LeBron, but Rich Paul as well, that he's the prodigal son. He was going to return in a kind of New Testament kind of way and bring the city a championship. So Rich Paul knew how much that meant, how much that would mean to the city and LeBron's legacy. And he was whispering in LeBron's ear over the years when they were in Miami, saying it might be time to go back home. And he was able to, so he was the one, so LeBron was on vacation. Rich Paul's the one leading negotiations with the Cleveland Cavaliers, talking to general manager David Griffin, and also speaking with the owner, Dan Gilbert. So speaking with the general manager and the owner and kind of orchestrating the whole move back to Cleveland. And not only did he convince LeBron or kind of push LeBron in the direction of going back to Cleveland, he also got him a great deal, maximizing LeBron's earning potential long term. So in 2014, LeBron signs a 2-year contract worth $42.1 million with a second-year player option, which is very, very interesting. Like, you sign a 2-year deal with an option with the ability to opt out after the first year of the contract. So this contract gives LeBron all the power over the Cavaliers. So if he goes there, so in 2014 he goes there, they get Kevin Love, they have Kyrie, and let's say after the first year he thinks that he has a better option somewhere else, he has the ability to leave. But the main reason why Rich Paul negotiated this type of contract is because in 2016, so 2 years later, TV contracts boost the max. So the max is around $63 million in 2014. It was going to go up to about $90 million in 2016, giving him a lot, or allowing him the opportunity to make way more money in a couple of years, because the max contract, I think it's allows where it's only a certain percentage. The max contract is a certain percentage of what the cap is. So if the cap goes up, you get more. You're able to make more money on a max contract. So the contract allowed him earning potential long term and flexibility to leave at any time. So he had power over the team. He had a stranglehold over the Cavaliers, and this allowed him to sign short-term deals, signing a lot of short-term deals with his time in Cleveland. Basically, yeah, LeBron, he is an amazing player, but what he's done over his career is he kind of uses up all the resources, all the draft picks of the Miami Heat, of the Cavaliers, and kind of leaves them in the dust later on, and they have no assets anymore. So he uses up teams as much as he can to allow him to win, which he has. He has 3 championships, also 6 finals losses. A lot of them, though, are excusable. I mean, the teams like the Warriors don't come around every decade. They're a once in a generation kind of thing. I mean, they made 5 finals, winning 3 of them. Could have won 5 if a couple things lined up their way. So Rich Paul did a tremendous job in getting LeBron to Cleveland, allowing his client contracts that were going to negotiating contracts for his client that were going to allow him to make more money in the long term, while also giving him the flexibility and the power over the organization in which he was employed for. So it's genius. It's, again, a part of this player empowerment movement era that we are now in. So Rich Paul, great savvy move there. But then last season, when LeBron is now with the Lakers, he has his client, Anthony Davis. So Rich Paul has his other client, Anthony Davis, one of the best power forwards, one of the best players in the NBA for that matter, request a trade. And not just request a trade, but wants a trade specifically to the Lakers to play with LeBron. But Anthony Davis has another 1.5 years left on his contract. So this is where the tampering, the conflict of interest comes into play. LeBron James, represented by Rich Paul. Anthony Davis, represented by Rich Paul. So this is where it gets a little fishy. And it's like, is this okay? Like, should this not be looked at a little bit closer? The fact that LeBron James's best friend and agent also represents other players in the league and is somehow orchestrating a trade that would allow both of his clients to play for the same team, helping LeBron's interests as his friend get another championship by getting a player like AD. So the way that it happened is, again, Anthony Davis requests a trade. The Pelicans do not want to give him away just yet. And Anthony Davis has been public saying he has no desire to re-sign with the Pelicans, and it just makes him look like the bad guy. And this completely blew up, and Rich Paul was the one who advised Anthony Davis to request a trade. And it totally just made him look like the bad guy. Things end up not working out. This gave the Pelicans more leverage in discussions. So, so go back a little bit. Anthony Davis requests a trade on the account of Rich Paul's agent advising him to. So that now gives more leverage to the Pelicans, knowing that he wants to be traded to the Lakers. So they took the Lakers for everything they had. I think they got three draft picks. They got Brandon Ingram, who's now one of the best young forwards in the NBA, averaging 25 a game and near 50, 40, 90. So huge asset there. Then you have Lonzo Ball, who is a very underrated defender. I mean, forget everything about his dad. He's still one of the best young passers in the NBA, and again, a very underrated defender. So a great player there, and then a great rotational player in Josh Hart, and all three of those guys are solid. Even Lonzo Ball are all pretty solid 3-point shooters. So they got three great assets there. Three great young prospects there, along with 3 draft picks. So that move, basically, the point I'm trying to come across is that Rich Paul, he kind of fumbled there. It wasn't a very savvy move on his part. He kind of crippled. First off, he made Anthony Davis, who throughout his entire career has been a very likable guy, kind of made him look like a villain, kind of unfaithful to the Pelicans, who he's been with his entire career. But again, in this industry, there is no loyalty, and we all know that. So Rich Paul, it hasn't been all roses his entire career, but so he had this. So again, we broke down the savvy LeBron deal going back to Cleveland with the Sports Illustrated letter, of course. Very nice touch. The Anthony Davis blunder. But in the end, he got his client to where he wanted to be, but it came at a very hefty price for the Lakers organization. And in my opinion, if they don't win a championship out of this, that might be one of the... if they don't win a championship in this 3 to 4 year window, that might be a trade we look back on that at the time very positive, because Anthony Davis, he's a once in a generation kind of talent. But if they don't win a championship, which is the main goal that every NBA, that's why we compete, is to win a championship. We'll look back on it not as fondly, especially if Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball, and Josh Hart continue to flourish and make a couple All-NBA teams. I would say the only one who has a chance is Brandon Ingram, maybe in a couple of years. So yeah, moving on, we're going to get into the more, I don't know how to say it, kind of the more tampering, conflict of interest, kind of the business, I'm going to say more the business side of an agency, because for those who don't know, the agency world, college basketball, it's kind of slimy industry. There's a lot of cutthroat. There's a lot of paying things under the table. So not that Klutch has done any of those things, but in July of 2019, UTA, United Talent Agency, buys a stake of Klutch Sports. Paul becomes the head of sports at UTA, focusing on building UTA's sports business for athletes in all their professional endeavors, both on and off the field, as we've seen with LeBron, uninterrupted, Spring Hill Entertainment. Athletes today want to be more than just an athlete. Hence the documentary that LeBron made along with his boys. So UTA, one of the biggest agencies out there, is now owns Klutch, and UTA CEO Jeremy Zimmer, he's quoted saying, quote, "Klutch is built for the modern athlete who wants to thrive at the intersection of sports, media, music, art, and culture," end quote. So now Klutch is under a huge label, and this has allowed them to get even more clients. And most recently, and this is where things get interesting, so Trae Young of the Atlanta Hawks, his agent Omar Wilkes was at Octagon for 8 years. And he got, we never know how these deals really go down, but basically he's promoted over to Klutch to become the head of basketball operations, bringing with him Young along with his other clients, which include OJ Anunoby, Cam Reddish, and potential number 1 overall 2020 pick Anthony Edwards. So this is where things get interesting. Like, there's already talks now in the media that Young might team up with LeBron in LA. And it's just like, is this tampering? Is there a conflict of interest here? I mean, you have LeBron's best friend controlling the career of all these players, but also helping out his friend LeBron, a.k.a. bring AD over to the Lakers. I mean, I just don't get why. I mean, this is going to be a great 30 for 30 one day. I don't know why there isn't more discussion about how LeBron, he literally has his hand on everything that goes on in the NBA. And, like, for example, speaking of tampering, in 2017, Cam Reddish, a high school prep star at the time, had committed to Duke, was captured by TMZ getting food with James. So there is no rule that LeBron can't be friends with a high schooler, he's not doing anything wrong there, but he's definitely influencing. Imagine being a 17, 18-year-old kid and LeBron James takes you out to lunch. Like, of course, that's going to have some influence on where you decide where you want representation, who you want for representation. So it's a very slippery, sticky, it's a gray area, is what I'll say. It's a gray area. LeBron's not doing anything wrong. Rich Paul's not doing anything wrong. But just the influence that LeBron has over all these players in the NBA, it's like nothing we've ever seen before. And honestly, I kind of love it. I think it's great for the sport, for athletes to be able to have more power, make their own decisions, do what they want for their careers. Because at the end of the day, it's their lives. Like, everyone can get mad at Kevin Durant, and honestly, I think it was a weak move just for the fact that his team was up 3-1. His team was up 3-1. And they had 3 different opportunities to win and beat the Warriors. And the very next summer, he goes to the Warriors, the team that just went 73-9. This is a dead conversation because it's been going on. It's in the past, and people have said what they want to say about this. But at the end of the day, like, it's his life, and SF's a great city to build your brand and prosper. And I think it's a great place. I think a lot of young adults should all consider living in a place like San Francisco. But yeah, the fact that he could have came back next year with that same OKC team and probably could have given the Golden State Warriors a run for their money. And the fact that I'm just a big guy in terms of team loyalty, where I want to see a guy play his entire career with the same organization, a la Derek Jeter, Kobe Bryant, Tim Duncan, Dirk Nowitzki, Tony Gwynn, Mr. San Diego. So things aren't like that anymore. We live in this whole social media era where things go really fast. People change, they flip-flop. Like, I just couldn't decide what I want to do for the 4th. Was I going to go to Newport? Was I going to stay in San Diego? So it's just these decisions that it's your life, though. You got to do what makes you happy. So kind of going off on a tangent there, but Klutch Sports has now picked up 5 new clients. 4 new clients in OJ Anunoby, Cam Reddish, Anthony Edwards, Trae Young. So it's going to be interesting to see how Trae Young's career plays out these next couple years. Does he come to LA in free agency? Do they maneuver another trade? But at this point, the Lakers have 0 assets to give up. So the likeliness of a trade is 0, I'd say. And now, I think we've had enough to talk today about Rich Paul, but kudos to him. Hey, again, did not go to college, does not have higher education, but again, that shit is bullshit. You don't need higher education to be a successful person in this world. And Rich Paul is a great example. Again, he did have the opportunity of befriending LeBron James, but he took that opportunity that he was given and he made the most of it. And that's a lot more that he can say than most people can say for their own lives. So, moving on, Nick's Picks is coming up. We are discussing the best sports movies since 1993. So stay tuned for that, and we'll get back to you right after these commercials.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
And we're back on the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. And it's everybody's favorite segment of the week, Nick's Picks. And today we are looking at the best sports movies since 1993. Why 1993? Because that was the year I was born, and I feel like it wouldn't be right for me to judge movies that were before my time, it's harder for me to pick up on the significance of the significant impact of that movie or what happened during that time. So I just think it's better, and it just makes things a little bit more modern. Like, these are movies that came out during my generation, during my lifetime. As much as there's great movies like The Natural, Hoosiers, Teen Wolf. Hey, there's basketball involved, so it's somewhat of a sports movie. So we begin now, of course, with the honorable mentions, and I'm going with Glory Road. There are some inaccuracies in this movie. For example, dunking was banned by the NCAA during a couple years in the 60s due to the impact of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and how dominant he was in college. And there's a lot of dunking in this movie, which wouldn't have happened because, again, it was banned, which is an insane thing to ban. Like, why would you ban something as ferocious, as entertaining as the slam dunk? I mean, that is the reason why that's one of the main reasons why we love the NBA. The dunk contest. Vince Carter, Michael Jordan, Dr. J. These guys popularized basketball by way of the dunk. And by taking that away, that's such a big part of the game. Like, when you're underneath the basket and you're a big 7-foot guy, you're trying to slam that shit down. You're not trying to lay it off the glass. But going off on a tangent there. So, Glory Road came out in 2004, and 2006, and it tells the true story of the first all-black starting lineup for Texas Western, now known as UTEP, University of Texas at El Paso. So the first all-black starting lineup in NCAA tournament history, or NCAA finals history. And they go off against a legendary Kentucky dynasty with Adolph Rump, who is like they portray him as like they don't portray him in a very positive lighting. They make him look like a Hitler figure. Definitely a bigot. I mean, it's the South. It's the 60s, so things weren't good. And it's funny because if you're a basketball fan, you'll notice that Pat Riley, that Pat Riley from the Lakers head coach, the Miami Heat, 5-time champion. So he actually was one of the starting guards on that Kentucky team that ended up losing to the all-black Texas Western team. So fun fact there. So Glory Road, great movie and such an important part in the history of basketball. I mean, if you look at any NCAA tournament finals now, it's usually some teams do have all-black lineups, but again, that wasn't a thing back in the 60s, and there was a rule where you could only, if you played in the South, you could only have 2 black players on your team. So, sorry, this episode today has been, I think, a little bit on the race side, but I think it's important for these movies that are a part of our history in terms of civil rights and moving forward. I think it's important for us to acknowledge. So Glory Road, honorable mention. Next, I had to go with a funny comedy, and I was up for debate between Talladega Nights, Ricky Bobby, or Dodgeball, A True Underdog Story, and I went with Dodgeball, A True Underdog Story. You have peak Ben Stiller, peak Vince Vaughn at the height of their careers, and how can you just not love Vince Vaughn's character? Just the average Joe, no pun intended, kind of guy that everybody loves, everybody respects. And then you have your super douche, Ben Stiller's character, the evil, maniacal White Goodman, classic bad guy movie character. So you have that there, and then you just have some... this is the type of movie, and I hate going this way, because I just feel like America has just gone in a more PC direction, but this is a type of movie that probably could not be made anymore. There's some things that might be seen as a little racy. For instance, Justin Long's character. There's the one scene where he's trying out for the cheer team, and he gets partnered up with a heavy-set woman, probably about 250 to 300 pounds, and he has to pick her up, and miraculously, this is probably one of the most miraculous parts of the movie, is when he actually is able to pick her up and lift her, and then she falls on him straight down, and we all know where his head ends up. So, type of jokes that they're great. In hindsight, they were great, but in hindsight, maybe a little too inappropriate, but that's the thing. It's a movie. It's supposed to make us feel a certain way. So I don't think we should stop making these hilarious movies just because some people might think it's not PC. Like, total bullshit. So moving on, we have Glory Road, Dodgeball, True Underdog Story, and then Nick's picks, best sports movie since 1993. And this one, I think, is a very underrated movie, and that's Rush, which is a Formula One movie about James Hunt and Niki Lauda. And you have James Hunt, your playboy, party animal. It doesn't take the game as seriously as Niki Lauda, his counterpart, who is very stern, not a very good-looking guy, not very charming is what I would say, but an amazing driver, hardworking, and it goes through just the relationship between James Hunt and Niki Lauda, especially during that 1 year where James Hunt won. And that for James Hunt, that was enough. He only wanted to win one championship, and he would have been satisfied. With Niki Lauda, he wanted multiple titles. So it's a tremendous movie. It came out in 2011, considered, I believe, one of the best. I would definitely say one of the best sports movies of the last 25 years, and highly recommend. Moving on, number 4, Jerry Maguire, and personally one of my favorite movies of all time. And this is where we get stuck. Is this a sports movie? Is it a rom-com? There are sports scenes, but there's a lot of time in the movie is about the relationship between Tom Cruise and Renee Zellweger. As much as I love this movie, I don't really believe the whole relationship between Tom Cruise and Renee Zellweger. First off, he has another wife, or he has a fiance in the beginning of the movie, and then they break up due to the fact that he got fired from his job, he broke it off because he found out that she was kind of a big bitch, pardon my language. So he breaks it off with her, she punches him in the face, and then he leaves his company, and within like a couple weeks, he's hooking up with Renee Zellweger, hanging out with his son, marrying her within, like, I don't know the timeline of the movie, but probably within a 6-month span. Like, that happens very rarely. It makes it really hard for me to believe the love story between Jerry Maguire's character and Renee Zellweger's character. So that's where I kind of have issues with this movie, but Cuba Gooding Jr. gives an outstanding Best Supporting Actor performance. I believe he was nominated for his portrayal of Rod Tidwell, an undersized wide receiver playing for the St. Louis Cardinals, who is trying to get his next contract, but since he's not the prototypical 6'3", 6'4", wide receiver, he doesn't get the same admiration as other players, Andre Reeds, Michael Irvings, and the Jerry Rices, and so forth. So the funny thing is, the guy's balling out the entire movie. I think they said he had like 100 and something receptions the year before, and this guy's not getting a multi-year deal worth at least 15 to 20 million, even during 1996 when this movie was made. So it's interesting to see his relationship, Tom Cruise's relationship with his one client, because that's what he wanted. The whole point of the movie is he wants to get away from too many clients, not enough personal relationships. So it's a very beautiful movie. We actually get a nice scene from Drake Bell flipping off Jerry Maguire. So that's funny for anyone who is a Drake and Josh fan. Next one, He Got Game, number 3. And the reason I chose He Got Game, it's not a very well-publicized movie. I'd say it's more of an indie film because a lot of Spike Lee's films are like I'd say they put less marketing in these things. And the fact that it has Ray Allen, the basketball player in the movie, I think maybe discredits a little, but in his defense, he did an amazing job for someone who isn't an actor by craft. Like, that's not what he does on a day-to-day basis. He was able to give a pretty solid performance. So He Got Game. Ray Allen's character, Jesus Shuttlesworth, is the best player in New York, in the country. He's the number 1 player in the country. His dad, portrayed by Denzel Washington, is in jail. The warden of the jail says, if you can convince your son to go to Big State University, fictional of course, you will be let out of jail immediately. So Denzel gets out of jail and has to convinces his son, pushes his son in the direction of going to Big State. And yes, again, the reason why I chose this movie is because this is how the shit really goes down with the college visits, the agents trying to recruit you out of high school. It just shows the whole sleazy back end of the college basketball realm. And yeah, I worked for the men's basketball team when I was in college, and one of the players told me, I asked him, what is your favorite basketball movie? And he's like, He Got Game. And I was like, why? He's like, because that's how that shit happens. You go to the school, they get you the prostitute. Hey, no offense to Louisville, but yeah, this shit really does happen. So hearing that from someone, really, I mean, that's what movies are meant to do. They're meant to be as realistic as possible. You don't want them to be fake. And the fact that He Got Game just shows how dirty college basketball can be and how many things go on behind closed doors. So He Got Game, number 3. And for number 2, we have another great Denzel Washington movie, Remember the Titans, another movie that deals with segregation and desegregation in this instance, where in Alexandria, Virginia, an all-black school mixes in with an all-white school, and they have to play on the same football team. And it's, looking back at this movie, there's a lot of things that are wrong with it if you go back and look at the true story. But hey, that's why it's based off a true story, not completely the truth of what happened. So everyone knows, Remember the Titans, we are the Titans, the mighty, mighty Titans. Yeah, you can't get enough of it. And lastly, my number 1 movie of all time, and this might make me a little bit biased, is Moneyball. I did work for the Oakland A's until very recently, and Moneyball tells the true story of general manager Billy Beane and his way of going against what baseball's believed in so long and how to measure players and using statistics and analytics to better analyze players using things such as on-base percentage and not measuring players off how they look in terms of physique and facial features and basing it off the numbers, which, hey, it's a numbers game. So I just don't know why it took people so long to think this way. So yes, Oakland A's, they are a small market franchise with a small payroll and an owner that isn't willing to put more money up front. And Brad Pitt, Billy Beane, played by Brad Pitt, and along with Peter Brand, portrayed by Jonah Hill, who is not based off. Peter Brand is not a real person. It is supposed to be based off of Paul DiPodespo, who is now working for the Cleveland Browns in the NFL. But he didn't like how he was portrayed, so they had to create a fictional character. But again, it is based off Paul DiPodespo. And I guess it kind of just makes him look like a little nerd, I guess. So he doesn't look too flattering. But yes, Billy Beane, Peter Brand in the movie, they're thinking outside the box after what baseball's, even after everything we know about baseball for 120 years, there's still so much we don't know. And at the end of the day, the number 1 thing is to get runs. And how do you get runs? Getting on base, whether you get hit by a pitch, whether it's a walk, whether it's a hit, or got on by error, I don't care. You're on base. So Moneyball, best sports movie since 1993. And folks, that's all we have time for today. I just want to remember to tell everyone to stay safe, Stay inside if you have pre-existing conditions, and let's get through this together. As always, thank you for listening to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. As always, I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review, because that really helps us out. Also, if you can, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you, and have a great day.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.